Welcome to How to Grow a Garden. I'm Scarlett. Today I'm going to talk to you about dahlias. Growing dahlias, starting dahlias, preparing dahlias for the actual season of winter, and what to do if you find that some of your dahlias are already sprouting. Now, if you watched my previous dahlia episode, you'll know that I took the dahlias out of the ground pretty late. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, and that's because that's around the time when we actually got frost this year. This year has been ridiculous. Winter is just barely showing up, and I keep telling everybody that about 2 days after Christmas, spring arrived, because that's kind of how it feels. So what's happening is I'm actually keeping my dahlia roots in this room, in my growing room, and that's good, that's fine, but I am checking on them, and I'm finding that every now and then, one dahlia root will produce, will start to sprout. What I like to do is pot it up. Okay, so let me come nice and close so you guys can see what I'm talking about. This is a dahlia root. It's still leaking there. Okay. So this is the dahlia root. The root is just here. Now I have it so that it's slightly above the ground, and it really is leaking here. Okay, so I have it so it's just slightly above the ground, and that's so that I can harvest these little sprouts or shoots that come off here, and I can propagate them before I put this back in the ground. Now this one's very small, so I don't think I'll do a lot of harvesting on this one, but I am promoting growth, and I'm going to get it to grow well before it needs to go outside. So what I have is 4 over here and 1 big one here, and like I said, I've potted these up and got them going, because if you find that any of your dahlias have already started to sprout, that is the best thing to do. Just don't worry about, don't think you have to throw them out, and don't worry about trying to get them to go back into hibernation. If they want to come out, if they're ready to grow, then go ahead and pot them up, and make sure that they're nice and wet, not too wet. You want them like moist, like any other seedling, a little bit moist, and that they've got good light. Right, okay, so what I did, so let's start at the beginning. I went out to the garden and I dug up the dahlias and I cut off the tops and I brought them into the house and I cleaned them up. Now I want to show you what that looks like. So I've got them all separated so that they can't touch them. That way I don't have to worry about anything going back. So what I'm going through, and if I find one that's squishy, what squishy is going to be the first stage of rot. So I want to remove that. Just snip it off, because I know that as that gets, it's going to dry out, and that's fine, but as it gets squishy, it's going to get mushy, it's going to start rotting like a rotting potato or a rotting apple, and that is going to ruin the entire batch. So from there, we're going to throw it away. Okay, now, what I did is, when I dug them up from the garden and I brought them into the house, they were a big, tangled, dreadful mess, and I left one of these so that I could show you guys. So you can see they're all nice and clean. There's no roots, there's no dirt. This one, I tried to leave the dirt on so I could show you guys what it looked like when I took the dirt off, but, well, it kind of got the better of me, and most of the dirt got removed anyway. Now, it's pretty good, but what you do want to do, okay, is you want to find the stem, which is right there. Alright, so if this had just come out of the ground, it would have been covered in a whole bunch of craziness. So what I would like to do then is remove all of these little pieces. So they're like the tails or the roots. I just want to cut them all off. And the reason why you do that is because that's the first thing that's going to rot. And since you don't want it to rot, you want to avoid rotting, we're going to remove all this little stuff just in case, to make it less likely to rot. Now, if you do some research, if you go on YouTube and you look around, there are so many different ways to preserve, to store dahlias. Some people like to wrap them in plastic, and I mean like really wrap them. Like they will cut off all these pieces, which you can do. You can separate it so that you have eyes. Now don't just chop it up and put each one in its own thing. You want to separate it and make sure you've got eyes so that you actually get flowers coming from that. But some people will, when they're done separating, let's say like a small piece, like this, okay, like a dinky little tiny piece, they'll actually wrap this in cellophane and then label it and throw it in a box. Like, I mean, that's just, way too much single-use, non-renewable plastic, in my opinion. Now, I'm sure you guys know I don't use plastic, so I'm not going to recommend that. What I'm going to recommend is paper, because it is renewable. When we're all done with it or anything goes wrong with it, we just throw it on the compost, so that's perfect. You could cut this all apart. I like to leave it together. It's just like a potato. A potato has this shick with this CH. It has this shick, and as it does that, its little eyes are going to be developed. So you'll end up with a potato. I have one right here, a whole bunch of potatoes I dug up by accident. Okay, so these little eyes, that's what's going to develop. It's going to look similar to that. Not quite exactly the same, but it's going to look similar. And you'll find them normally at the base of your root, close to the stem. So see, the stem would have come here, and so we'll find little eyes going all the way around here. But the key is, in the fall, there's going to be very few eyes, and they're going to be really small, and they're going to be really, really hard to spot. Whereas, like a potato, if you let it sit in your shed, in your cold room, somewhere that's between 2 to 5 degrees, I believe is the right range. Ooh, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I'll have to look that up and write it in for you guys. But somewhere in that range, 2 to 5 degrees, you don't want them to freeze, but you definitely don't want them to be too warm because they'll sprout. That's when your little eyes are going to develop. So if we look at this again in the spring, then I'll be able to say, okay, so on this one, let's hypothetically say there's an eye over here, and there's a nice eye over here, then I can cut it in the middle, and I can take this side and make 2 of them. I am not going to do that. I have so many, like there's 2 boxes and each box has 2 layers. So these are the 3 feet and these are 7 feet down here. That means in height 7 feet tall. So what I'm going to do is just leave them the way they are. Now this one I might break up because it's kind of crazy huge. I mean, whew, it's insanely huge. You also can remove all the dirt. You can wash them. If you want to wash them, you can do that. They should take about 2 weeks to dry out, but I've been noticing that now they've been sitting here for about a month. If I cut off the ends, I will notice that they are still wet inside. So I'm not so sure if you're going to wet them or wash them. You really have to dry them somewhere where they're going to dry. I don't recommend putting them in a dehydrator. That doesn't sound good, or the oven, obviously. If you have sun, maybe laying them out in the sun will work, but if you're in September, that might work. But in December, when I took them out of the ground, there was no sun to be spoken of. So this one is, of course, sprouting. This is a new sprout coming out the top here. And that means that it should actually go up here in a pot. But I'm going to leave it in here a little longer because I don't have enough pots at the moment. I need some of these things to go in the garden, or I need to get more pots and more shelves and more lights. Oh my goodness. You can use perlite and put them into a paper bag and fill it with perlite, or you can just take a big bag full of perlite. You can buy them at the hardware store or the garden shop or something. I have a really huge perlite bag in a burlap bag, and there's perlite in it. It's really cool. And I can throw all these in there. But then next spring I would have to go through and dig out the perlite, and perlite it's a white substance that's kind of annoying because it gets everywhere. And so I wouldn't really want that just all over the place, all over me. So I'm not going to do that. Same thing with wood chips or sawdust. That also will stick to your clothes, but entirely up to you. But I definitely recommend to open up your dahlias and check them. So I'm checking them every few weeks because it's so warm. If you've got it in a cooler place and it has no light and it has no warmth, it shouldn't start to sprout, in which you'll be okay. So then maybe you check it once every 6 weeks or 8 weeks if you can get away with that. So that is how I am preparing my dahlias for winter, and how I'm checking them every few weeks during the winter, and what I'm doing if I find anything that's actually sprouting. Thanks for watching. I'm Scarlett, and I'll see you in the next episode. Toodaloo.